Cokie Berenyi here with Perfect Day and Perfect Day Connect. Thank you so much for joining me for this exclusive webinar. I am here to deliver on a promise. You are here because you are looking for the processes and the tools to bring more perfect days in your life, and we're going to do that. I am here because I want to be your perfect day engineer. So I can't tell you how many people approach me and say perfect days, it just seems so hard, like that perfect days are unattainable or hard to have. And I'm here to tell you I've spent over the last decade bringing a process to not only a process that I've vetted and have made come true in my own life, but a process that I've brought to not only my individual clients, but also my entrepreneur clients who are trying to bring more perfect days, not only into their personal lives, but also into their businesses. So I'm so glad that you've joined us here today. And my goal at the end of the webinar, not only am I going to give you some special pricing to dial in and learn more about Perfect Day Connect, which is an e-course that we have that aims to sort of hold your hand a little bit more. You know, maybe after this webinar, maybe you want more, or maybe you get enough. After that, if you do want more, like I said, you can dial into the e-course. Or there's plenty of other tools and resources with which you can use to continue to have and to continue to hone and build a framework for more perfect days in your life. So, you know, you're here because you're looking for transformation, and this is the place to get it. You know, I want to go back to an early memory that I have when I had this aha moment of wanting and needing more perfect days in my life. A business coach of mine said, Cokie, I want you to take a busy day out of your schedule, an entire day. Yes, an entire day. I appreciate you giving me an hour here today, but this person asked me to give them an entire day out of my schedule so that I could create what was called a perfect day. Well, I thought, oh, okay, this is a great idea. Not. I was saying to myself, how much business am I going to lose, or how much money am I not going to make in that particular day? And really, am I going to merge with something that's going to be that beneficial that I spend 8 hours on? Well, let me tell you, the day was the most pivotal day in my personal and professional life. It really was. And I remember that cold day in January when I pulled in, not believing that I could emerge with the framework that I needed. And albeit that framework has changed quite a bit over the last, gosh, that was 12 or 15 years ago. It was some time ago that this first perfect day written happened. But suffice it to say, let me tell you something. When I went into writing my perfect day, let me tell you what was broken. I went into it thinking, this is all about financial. This is all about money. And I went into the process thinking, oh, I want to retire at 50 and I want to have X amount of millions of dollars in the bank so that I'm financially secure. That was my idea of what was going on going into this process of writing my perfect day. All about money. And let me tell you what happened. I emerged with a perfect day that had me with children I didn't have. And it also had me climbing mountains, which I had never climbed. Physical mountains, not proverbial mountains, physical mountains. I had started a nonprofit called She Climbs, all of these, you know, wild-fangled things that involve different areas of my life. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is that focusing on just the financial component is not the end game. The end game is about taking all the components and all of the assets in your life and making those work for you today, as opposed to focusing on some date or time out into the future when you want to retire. I mean, this notion of retirement is, I can barely even say the word. Okay, the notion of retirement is dead. It's a dinosaur. So we need to create what we want in our lives today. I've seen too many people come through my practice that they just want to hit the button. They want to hit the reset. They want to get out. It's because they're spinning on this never-ending hamster wheel of life with a never-ending to-do list, and they want off. They want off the hamster wheel. And so they think that it's hitting this button of I got to get out. And that getting out for them is retirement. just like I went into that perfect day workshop saying to myself, oh, I want to retire at 50. It's this mindset of wanting to get out. And that's what we're here to change today. So if you can focus on bringing into today what you're envisioning out into your future, then you can absolutely have more perfect days in your life. So, what has been very evident to me in the last, 20 plus years of my career is that the people that I meet with that, again, are wanting out suffer from a term that I've trademarked called lifestyle deficit disorder. So do you have it? Do you have lifestyle deficit disorder? You don't know? Well, do you find yourself saying, oh, I'm exhausted, or I'm unhappy, or I'm overtaxed, or overworked, or overwhelmed? If you say that, and if the feeling resonates with you of being on this never-ending hamster wheel, and if you're looking for an off-ramp to your hamster wheel, then and if you're seeking this, I want to retire, I need to get out, then you do have lifestyle deficit disorder. So perfect days and the perfect day framework is going to help you keep what I call LDD at bay. So we're going to talk about that a little more today as we come into the process. But one thing I'd like to share with you is this visual I have, and it is you can picture male or female, whichever you wish. But I had this image created. Toby Thomas, who was CEO of Insight Solutions, had this great analogy that I heard several years ago that talked about this person riding a lion. And he goes on to say that if you were to look down the street and you see this person riding this lion, you're looking at this person on the lion and you're saying, oh my God, there's that woman, she's riding a lion. How cool is she? And gosh, how brave she must be, right? I mean, do you have that in your life? Do you have those people that you look at and you say, oh, wow, they've got such a great life? Or it may be someone within your organization who's really with it, or just, a person in your sphere of influence. And just, for me, conjuring up this vision of this person riding this lion and how brave they are and how cool they are, right? Well, take a step back and think, what's the person riding the lion thinking? Okay? The person riding the lion is on the lion, grabbing onto the mane, white-knuckled, and saying, how the hell did I get on a lion? And how the hell do I get off without getting eaten alive? Okay, that's what's really happening. So we're sitting here saying, oh, they're cool and brave. And the person riding the lion is saying, holy bleep, how do I get off this lion without getting eaten alive? Well, I love that analogy for that of the everyday entrepreneur, or for those of us who are wearing too many hats. I mean, we all wear too many hats. I mean, I'm sorry, men who've dialed in here today, but the women are worse at this. Okay, you guys do a much better job at wearing fewer hats than we do, and not always true, so I'm sorry. But for those of us who are wearing too many hats, or the entrepreneur who has to wear lots of hats, that picture of the person riding the lion resonates with me, because you feel like, oh my gosh, if I alter course at all, and if I decide to get off this lion to go get on a nice little pony, like what's going to happen? Okay, so you could be underway with certain business models or revenue models, and altering course might feel a lot like, trying to get off the lion. Well, let me just share with you that getting off the lion is how you're going to cure lifestyle deficit disorder. And it does take some faith, and it does take some trust in a system. And I'm here to tell you, I've stepped off the lion. Okay, I did it. And many other people have done it under my purview, and many other people have done it without me as well. So it's up to you to want the transformation. So if you want the transformation of the off-ramp to the hamster wheel, the never-ending to-do list, and if you're wanting to bring this sense of joy, and I hate to use the word balance, but a sense of balance to not only your financial life, okay, because that's what I'm good at. I mean, that's what I do. This is my schooling and my background, and over 2 decades of my career, this is what I do. Now the performance engineering and the perfect day engineering, yeah, I've got that, but we've got the financial backing behind it too. Okay, so today what I want to do is sort of marry what's happening in your financial life and what's happening within your business, and then what's happening in your personal life, because it's far too often that we're placing too much focus in our day-to-day lives on just the financial thing, just the financial pot, just that asset, if you will. And I know why it happens. I mean, it's tangible. You can see your assets rise and fall. It's really hard to see and measure a metric of your relationships rising and falling, of your health rising and falling, of your contribution and changing of the world rising and falling. That's sort of a harder metric. And so, one of the things that I want to talk with us today about is this idea of we have many, many assets in our lives, okay? And of them, yes, we have financial assets, but I can share with you one of the greatest truths I know to be true under a concept of true wealth, thanks to my coach and mentor, Lee Brower. Lee Brower wrote the Brower Quadrant, which gave me a lot of my background for writing Perfect Day and living Perfect Day and creating my own perfect day in my life. Lee Brower is the creator of True Wealth and has deemed me a True Wealth ambassador, as I'm going through many, many, many hours and workshops and trainings and many, many clients later. True wealth is that idea of embracing the fact that our assets stem far beyond our financial assets. And it was Lee Brower, who I'm so grateful for, who really hit home this concept of contribution, and that our greatest asset and the biggest thing that we have in this life is not our checkbook, but that our greatest asset is our ability to contribute. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit as well. So your framework and the process is for us to hit on all four of these areas and to eliminate what Lee calls as a wobble. We call it a wobble. If you're overbalanced or focusing too much on one area of your life, it's going to create an imbalance or a wobble. So I want to ask you, I want to take a step back, and I'm hoping you agree, yes, I have lifestyle deficit disorder. I mean, I've had it. Let me tell you, I've had it. And I'd like to talk to you about that one personal story that I think hits home with most about my own episode of lifestyle deficit disorder. Because if you can sidestep what I call ER moments or severe crises that stem from lifestyle deficit disorder, and if you can sidestep those types of life events, I mean, picture them. You've probably heard of, death and dying and cancer and a rehab. I mean, all of these things have come through my financial planning practice, unfortunately. And these are things that, your financial planner is not necessarily going to put into your financial plan. That, oh, Tom, instead of focusing on long-term care insurance that you might need to put into your plan at age 62, why don't we plan on the fact that you're working too hard and half of your assets are going to go away at 42 years old when your wife leaves you. So these are things that are real. And I know it's not, fun and positive to talk about, but it's a reality and it's what I've seen. And so I'm trying to share with you the negative in those instances so that perhaps you can sidestep what I call are those ER moments. And in addition to that, I want to share some positives, which is the fact that one day I woke up, and thankfully I didn't have an ER moment, but I did have an awakening where I recognized that I absolutely have lifestyle deficit disorder. It was back in 2009. I had just clawed my way through a recession, having started my financial practice over. I left big brokerage and a big Wall Street firm and, big corner office, 2 partners, 3 employees, managing, 300 million in assets. and all of a sudden looked up and, you know, the rug was pulled from under me. Left, restarted my practice, and then a recession hit. So I clawed my way through this recession. Meanwhile, my husband is in industrial engineering and manufacturing and big, heavy industrial engineering. And so as you can imagine, in the heights of the recession, his business was not doing very well either. And oh, by the way, our children are 5 and 6. Well, they're 20 months apart, but about 5 and 7 years old. Here's what I knew. I knew that my children and I knew that my husband were getting my leftovers. I had clawed through a recession. My business was firmly on its feet. And I looked at my husband and said, it's time for us to dial in the kids. I had this situation where my first grader was being told at school that she was not completing the board. And I know you're asking yourself, like, why is she telling this story? Well, this was sort of that aha moment as a parent. And I don't know if you're listening, if you're a parent or not, but this story could be told of your team if you don't have children. The bottom line is, at the end of the story, I'll tell you how it just, something was right under my nose and I didn't see it. And when you have a 7-year-old or a junior on your team sort of bring something to your attention where you feel like you've had your head in the sand, it's not a good feeling. And so that was my wake-up call, is that here my first grader is being told she needs to copy the board every day in school, and she couldn't finish copying the board. She had meticulous handwriting. The story's in the book. I'm sure you have the book, but if not, the story's in the book, so I'll give you an abbreviated version. But suffice it to say, her handwriting is perfect. This was a handwriting exercise, and she couldn't finish the board because she was being a perfectionist. I don't know where she got that. And by the way, have I said that perfect days are not about perfection? I need to get that in here right now. So long story short, the school, you know, after 4 or 5 meetings, and of course they're denying her PE, they're denying her to run around because she's not finishing the board. And, you know, here's a child who is 7 who needs to run around. And many, many meetings later, telling me, you know, I need to start medicating my 7-year-old because she's not copying the board. And after many days of an incentive of going to get gelato, if she finished the board, I would take her to get gelato after school. Well, we had a stretch of, let's say it was 12 or 14 days. And she gets in the car and I say, did you finish the board? And she looks at me with this very long face and says, no, I didn't finish the board. And I was like, what happened? And she was all upset, and I looked at her, and she's just, her face, was heartbreaking to see the heart of a 7-year-old because she didn't copy the board and hasn't had PE and had to eat lunch at her desk. True, and true. And I said, what happened? And she said, Mom, it was just too long today. It was just too long. And I just didn't want to do it. It was just too long. And I was like, all right, well, talk to me about that. And you know what? It was in February, and I can tell you why I know it was in February, because my child looked at me, 7 years old, and says, you know what, Mom? If the teacher had just told me to write the date and write out the assignment, if she spoke it to us and we had to write it down, then we might learn something. Because if I had to write the date and I had to write that it was February the 10th, 2009, then I'd have to remember how to spell February, because February is a really hard word to spell. It has that February, and it's hard to spell, so I'd have to remember that. And so I think it's kind of stupid that they want us to copy from the board. We're not learning anything. Like, at least if she would call it out to us, we'd be learning how to spell. That was the aha moment. So I looked at my child and I said, let's go get some gelato. So here I'd been taking my child through this exercise of being somewhat berated and denied in school, and I wasn't her advocate. I realized I hadn't gone to bat for her, and I realized I was asleep at the wheel, and I realized I didn't go to that teacher and say, I don't care if my kid copies the board because her handwriting is impeccable. my kid wants to learn how to spell February, and by God, she knows how to do it. So why don't you call it out to her and have her, write down what you have to say versus her copying it from the board. So that was my moment. And it's a long story to say that I had to do something super hard and super brave. And I decided, after my husband and I had clawed our way again through this recession, and here I had a brand new practice, I decided I was going to swoop up my children and take them all the way across the country to live in a sleepy little perfect town called Silverton, Colorado, where we had one paved road, and there's no stoplights, and it's really a modern day version of Little House on the Prairie. And for me, that was my way of saying, I have lifestyle deficit disorder, and I need to take everything off the hamster wheel. I don't need Ubers and fancy restaurants and theaters, and I just need the mountains and one paved road and a fabulous little school for my kids to go to, and some time for my husband and I to reconnect and really dial back in the family unit. And it worked. But let me tell you, it would not have worked without a framework. And this is really one thing I want to hit home to you, is the fact that, we talked earlier about the reset. We talked earlier about wanting to tap out. Well, that seems a lot like me wanting to tap out. It was just really tapping out of the environment that I am in, or that we were in, rather. And if you do that and you don't change the framework or have a framework for success, it's just delaying the inevitable. So for those of us who have lifestyle deficit disorder and say to yourselves, oh, I just need a vacation. Well, vacation is a reset, okay? And I'm not saying that people don't need vacations, because people need lots of vacations. And I'll be the first person to tell you, I love traveling and I take lots of vacations. However, a vacation without framework, okay, a vacation without a perfect day framework, and a business model without a perfect day framework is just a Band-Aid, okay? It's just a Band-Aid. It's when you come back from that vacation, how long is your inbox gonna be with emails? How many voicemails are you going to have in your inbox? How many unhappy clients are you going to have? So these resets without framework don't work. And so that's what I want to caution you against. But I also want to caution you against thinking that, just like I said, that perfect days, they don't have to be hard and grandiose. To escape lifestyle deficit disorder, you don't need to uproot your family and move halfway across the country either, okay? And I do believe I have a simple framework to help you with in that regard. So, there's many ways in which we can define your version of lifestyle deficit disorder and creating more perfect days for you. And I think the first thing is to really get real and honest with yourself about what part of LDD plagues you the most. Is it that you don't have enough time? Is that you don't have enough money? I bet one of the biggest culprits, and this is just what I find in my own personal research, is that the biggest culprit, maybe for you, maybe not, but for most, is the inability to delegate. So these are the three pervasive items that you're going to find in lifestyle deficit disorder. And so therein lies part of the framework that you need for resets, is that first and foremost, you're going to have to figure out that wearing too many hats translates to lifestyle deficit disorder and translates to not having enough time. I don't have enough money, and oh, I don't even have time to delegate. Let me ask you that. How many of you have to be honest with yourself and say, yes, I do often subscribe to that, I call it the rugged individualist approach, it'll take too long to explain it to somebody. I'm just going to do it myself. Don't do that. Do not do that. So for the individual, the entrepreneur who keeps finding themselves saying, well, I just have to do it myself, or they don't know how, or it's just easier for me to do myself, or it's going to take too much time for me to explain how someone else can do it, or no one can do it as good as I can. If you're in that trap, that's one of the first things you're going to have to change. And I'm going to tell you, it's not easy. It's not easy. one of the first easy frameworks, I want to give a shout out to one of my coaches and mentors, Shauna McKenzie, gave me the idea of the yes diet. So you need to go on a yes diet. Quit saying yes to whether it's the small task or the large task, okay? You're going to have to go on a yes diet in order to find your own personal framework, in order to cure your own lifestyle deficit disorder. Because I can promise you, perfect days are not about saying to yourself, I don't have enough time, or I don't have enough money. That's not the mindset. So here I'm talking about bringing to you a mindset. It's a shift. It's almost like putting on a different set of glasses. Okay, so today you might have on one set and it's going to take time. But again, the tools, I know I mentioned earlier, but Perfect Day Connect is where you can find the tools in the e-course. And, you know, I don't want to be too salesy, but if you're not going to get what you want to get out of today and you haven't gotten it out of the book, the e-course is really the next place to go, or reach out to me. You can reach out to me through social, email, you name it. I'm happy to, you know, customize and work with you on what's going to work best, because Perfect Day has been created in many different types of modalities, because people learn and people connect and transform through different modalities. So I recognize that. So with that being said, I'm here. I'm here really because this is my life's message. Perfect Day. What Perfect Day and being on this path for me has done, I don't know if you can hear it in my voice or see it in my eyes, but it has absolutely transformed my life. And the energy I get daily from just being on a Perfect Day path and having that mindset and having on that different set of glasses that helps me see my business and my children and my loved ones and just the world. Good situations, bad situations, just to see it from a different mindset is a beautiful thing. And so it's yours for the taking. So that's why we're here today. So that excites me, and I'm glad you've raised your hand. And I can almost feel you through the computer. So a few of you, I believe, have back-end access and can dial in and ask me some questions. So when I get to a place where you may or may not have a full concept of what we're talking about, feel free to chime in and ask me some questions. And if I have time within the content, I'm happy within the content of the webinar to try and answer some of those. So, we've mentioned that the perfect day is the cure, that we've mentioned that a reset is not a cure. Okay, a reset is without framework is just a Band-Aid. Well, the framework is Perfect Day. So let's talk about that, because Perfect Day is the cure. It's the antidote for lifestyle deficit disorder. And it is the cure for, again, that mindset shift and putting on that different set of glasses of the retirement mode of like, oh, I can't wait to get here to retire. I need to get to this certain point out in the future. Is we're going to shift that to shifting to focus on today. I mean, I can't tell you how many Johns, sorry guys, I do have some Janes, but I can't tell you how many Johns come to me and say, oh, Cokie, I had a good year in my business, and can you help me out? And yeah, I've got some money I want to invest, and can you help me with that? Because I want to retire soon. I want to retire in a couple of years. And I say, oh my gosh, John, that's awesome. That's so great. Good for you. Of course I can help you. So what are you going to do when you retire? That's so exciting. And invariably, it's two things. It's either golf or fly fish. And both those things are awesome. But I can't tell you how many Johns and Bills of the world I turn around and say, oh, golf, that's awesome. What's your handicap? And they both look back at me, or they all look back at me and say, well, I don't play golf. I don't play golf now. I want to play golf later. And that's just hilarious to me, because what the hell happens, John, when you retire and you get to that place in the future, which, by the way, that date in the future is not guaranteed. I mean, I don't want to get morbid, but people are dying much younger, and I'm seeing it. I mean, I'm 22 years into this, and I've seen a lot of devastation and crisis and a lot of era moments in my financial practice, and people are dying younger. And I don't know what that means. I don't know if lifestyle deficit disorder is just more pervasive because, I guess my worldview might be because everything is so much faster. Because we all do everything on this, and we're all going, and our screen time and everything is just much faster. And I don't know if that's creating this sense of frenzy, right? But a lot of people are dying a lot younger, and one reason is I don't think they're taking care of themselves emotionally, physically, spiritually, and that's what the perfect day mindset's about. So for the Johns and the Bills and the Janes, I have the Janes of the world who are like, I just want to put my toes in the sand and, have a cocktail little umbrella in it and, walk the beach every day. Well, okay. I mean, that's just not even reality. I mean, like how much longer after that happens are you going to wake up and say, ready to go back to work? Like, this is a little boring. Or how about, I hate golf? Or how about, fly fishing is a little too slow for my taste. So the point is, let's step out of that mindset of having a perfect day in the future. And let's try and move into a mindset of creating perfect days today. And one of the first ways that I suggest that we do that is fixing what I call your broken happy meter. Okay. I picked this up and I was talking about the phone, and we haven't really talked about social media stats. And the truth is, I don't know how you answered on having lifestyle deficit disorder, but if you have a Facebook account or an Instagram account, then statistics say that 89.4% of you absolutely have lifestyle deficit disorder. All kidding aside, that's a joke. All kidding aside, we are all way too sucked into social media. And there is a big trap in social media that can really create what I call a broken happy meter, where, have you ever done it? Where you sort of find yourself mapping yourself to, Jane on your Instagram account, who is, leader of her kids' soccer team and head of the PTA, and showing up at everything with, her gluten-free bonbons, and while carrying her 3-legged leopard she saved from Africa. I mean, it's like, seriously, I mean, does social media sometimes just make you feel like a loser? I mean, it does me often. And I think that is a great opportunity for me to say, my life is far from perfect. And perfect days are not about perfection, okay? Perfect days are not about having perfect balance. Perfect day is about being imperfectly imbalanced with the right mindset. So we have to start with, though, happiness. We have to start with that, because you're going to have to figure out how to fix your broken happy meter and not map to Barbie and Ken who live next door. And again, go back to the guy on the lion or the gal on the lion. You think how cool and brave they are. Well, the person on the lion might be absolutely, panic stricken. Okay. So our perception of what you're seeing isn't always reality. So make sure you're not trying to map yourself and what you want, your vision for today. Make sure you're not trying to map that to what you see in others and what you're seeing on social media. And really what we're going to be talking about is mapping it to your own values and to what you are really about and who you are deep down in your core. And when you find out who that is and you develop those assets more, those virtues that are inside of you that make you you, then you're going to find that your perfect days are going to be plentiful. And, one of the things I love to quote is Sir Richard Branson. I mean, when I think of perfect days, do you think of Sir Richard Branson? Because I do. I mean, I just feel like his life is over the top, right? And amazing businessman. And albeit I've not met him, It's on my bucket list. It's on my perfect day bucket list. He has a really good view of happiness. And I want to read you a quote. And it's, I know I'm fortunate to live an extraordinary life, and that most people would assume my business success and the wealth that comes with it have brought me happiness, but they haven't. In fact, it's the reverse. What Sir Richard Branson says is that I'm successful and I'm wealthy and connected because I'm happy. So that's the lens we want to get to. So let's think about what shades, what Ray-Bans would Sir Richard Branson be wearing in order to get to that place of becoming successful and wealthy and connected because he was happy first. And so this always brings me to an interesting conversation that I have with those interested in Perfect Day, especially with those who are business owners, because you're hard to sell happy to. I just got to tell you, you're hard to sell happy to. You know, we're go-getters. We're type A, and you know what we want? We want results. And selling to you this idea of like, oh, let's get happy. It's almost like happy schmappy. Are you serious? So what I want to sell to you is some information from my absolute favorite TED Talk. If you've never heard Sean Acker, his TED Talk is The Happiness Advantage, or Before Happiness. He is a guru and a happiness expert in the workplace, okay? And his TED Talk, I'll give you a link to it, reach out to me. It's the best 12 minutes, and I want to be him when I grow up. Let me just say that. Sean, I want to be you when I grow up. These TED Talks, by the way, and TEDx, just as a side note, that is not a conference of successes, by the way. TEDx is a conference of failures. And I want you to remember that, because happiness is going to come from being outside of your comfort zone. And when you do that, you're going to have some failures, okay? And the successes are going to come from that. And Sean will say that time and time again, as will my other favorite TEDx guru, Brene Brown. But back to Sean and happiness in the workplace. For those of you who are going, happy, how are you going to sell me that? Well, what about if I sold you that 75% of job success is based on an optimism, a sense of optimism in the workplace? So again, I want to repeat that. Job success, Sean Acker tells us, is not due to what we typically think is your IQ. Okay, people think, oh, success in the workplace is because you're so smart. No, he actually will tell you that it's based on three things. One is optimism, the other is social support, and then finally, the third item is the ability to see stress, not as a threat, but as a challenge. So yet again, that's sort of putting on those Sir Richard Branson or Perfect Day Ray-Bans, that different set of glasses to say, oh, I've got this stress in my life. I'm not going to take it as a threat. I'm going to see it as a challenge. This is that optimism piece that Sean's talking about. And the optimism is happiness. So how do we create happiness in the workplace so that ourselves and our employees can have 75% more job success? I mean, we want that, right? So where do we begin? How do we do that? It's really simple. We start by saying thank you. That's right. So this is the hardest part of my job. Again, my background, finance, accounting, investments. That's what I know. Spreadsheets, calcs, you name it. Compounding, investment research. I am not, I don't have any letters at the end of my name that help you create a list of what you're thankful for. But here's what I can tell you. I have seen it happen. I've seen it happen that for those of us who take the practice and take the time and have the disciplined practice of writing down the things we're thankful for on a regular basis, guess what we do? We rewire our brains. And why do we want to rewire our brains? Our brains are hardwired, and Sean will tell you this, our brains are hardwired for negativity. We are hardwired to see the unhappy. We are hardwired to see the negativity. We are not hardwired to see the optimism and the happiness. We're not hardwired for the perfect day set of glasses, for that mindset shift of moving away from something out into the future to moving to something today. We're not hardwired for that. But you need to begin by being thankful. So this is how we start the perfect day process. And the first step in creating the perfect day mindset absolutely starts with gratitude and becoming more thankful, and again, getting more well-versed into a practice of gratitude will absolutely rewire your brain and is the absolute base foundation of fixing your broken happy meter and creating more perfect days in your life. I mentioned Brené Brown earlier, and I love her quote that she doesn't have to chase extraordinary moments to find happiness. You know, before I mentioned, you know, mountain climbing and moving my children across the country. Well, those are extraordinary moments, but you don't have to chase those, because what Brené will tell you is that if you're not chasing those extraordinary moments, but you're just paying attention and practicing gratitude, that's where you'll find the happiness, okay? So the first step in the perfect day process is to sit down and write down the 10 things you're thankful for. And I want you to jot that down, and we're not going to do it right now. I want to move you through the process. But that's the first thing you have to do, and you can't skip the process. And, you know, I want to tell you that this is really hard to say, but I want to tell you that there's many people who go through this process and have a hard time coming up with 10 things that they're thankful for. And that's okay. Give yourself permission for that, because you know what? You're in the process of rewiring your brain. And right now, as you're listening to me, you're not in that place. You're not in that place of sitting down and being thankful. So give yourself permission for it to not be super easy, but challenge yourself to absolutely come up with those 10 things. Furthermore, beyond that, I want you to write a list of 5 positive experiences that you've had in the last 12 months. How is that different? Well, 5 positive experiences might be that, you know, your company year over year, you know, had 22% growth, and you celebrated that, you know, Q1 of 2018. Or you may have something in your mind when you go back through the calendar of an event that happened. You know, did you celebrate a birthday or an anniversary somewhere? Did you travel somewhere? So get a calendar in your mind, or pull out a calendar and go back over the last 12 months and write down the 5 positive experiences that you had. So you're going to have a list of 10 things you're thankful for and 5 positive experiences over the last 12 months. And not only is that exercise important just for getting yourself into the mindset, but that exercise is important because we may draw off of that in just a moment. And so from here, the next part of the process, the third step in the perfect day process, is to list your assets. And this is when I have people go, whoa, what do you mean? And this is my comfy schmumpy place. Okay, so thankfulness and gratitude and happiness may not be what I'm, you know, well schooled in terms of my formal education. Assets, now we're talking, right? This is the financial bit, and we're talking assets and balance sheets and income statements, right? Not necessarily. So you have many, many, many types of assets. And in a longer format, I would draw this out and I would tease you about what kind of assets do you have. But I really want to, you know, just go ahead and share with you that the 4 asset classes that we're going to be talking about are financial, is the obvious. So like your 401k, your house, your bank accounts, your investments, right? So those assets are easy, and you get that. They're pretty tangible. Beyond that, we have your experience assets. So what might your experience assets be? Your experience assets could be your wisdom, your educations, your worldview, your skills, your talents, your places that you've traveled, experiences you've had, networks, centers of influences, associations. So you get it, right? So you've got many experience assets. These are things that are often overlooked. And one of the biggest things that's typically overlooked in this exercise when you're doing this asset inventory is not inventorying your negative experiences. I'll say that again. Your negative experiences, I believe, are some of the best experience assets that you own. They're yours. So think about something negative that maybe has happened in your life and how you can turn that into an asset and into a positive. So we've talked about financial assets, experience assets. We also have something that we call core assets, which involves, it's who you are deep to your core. It's what I call your Eunice. They're also your relationships and your family and your health, your values. So what are your core assets that that you can inventory, okay? And then the last of the assets that we talk about are called your contribution assets. So again, I mentioned earlier in the webinar that I believe our greatest asset is our ability to contribute, our ability to give back and to make a difference. And what that does to other people's lives and what it does for your own life directly and indirectly is the deepest source of perfect day and of a perfect day mindset. So you can inventory what your contributions assets are heretofore. And I'll tell you something, I also want to give you permission to not have any contribution assets. It's unfortunate, but I can tell you 100% of the time when I take clients through this process of inventorying their assets and they emerge with what they want their perfect day framework to look like, which basically is taking the current assets that you have and making more of them, okay? Making more of those assets that make you happy on your inventory list. 100% of the time when people emerge from this process, and I'd love for you to make this not true, because I rarely say always or never or 100%, but 100% of the time, clients emerge from this process, individuals emerge from this perfect day process wanting to increase their contribution assets more than anything else in their lives. That this is the most underfilled tire, if you will, of the 4 asset categories. If you visualize them as 4 tires on a car, and that wobble I talked about, the wobble, 100% of the time, people want to increase their contribution bucket more so than they want to increase any of their other assets. So if that's not true for you, I'd love to hear from you. If it is true for you, I'd love to hear from you. This is the biggest challenge of people going through the perfect day process is how do they increase those assets? And it's a deep, hard question, and it's something that's very personal. And I will tell you that I believe the root of it is really figuring out who you are and what your Eunice is and what your true deep talents are. What those talents are with your family and your relationships and what that Eunice is at your business. You know, ask yourself, what gives me the most energy in my job? Ask yourself, and this is a great exercise, ask your top 3 clients, why do you do business with me? Why am I great at what I do? Whatever they answer, that's your Eunice, okay? That Eunice is how you can best help the world in your contribution asset category. We can define more of that later. But from here, once you sit down and write down all of your assets, okay, in no particular order, just start writing, you're going to come up with all the assets in your life, core, experience, contribution, and financial. And go ahead and categorize them, okay? And then you are going to create what's called a perfect day pyramid. And I hope that you can have these documents. Again, they're available through the e-course. We'll have them available here through the webinar. It'll be a PDF that you can use to transfer the assets from these 4 categories. Your framework that you're going to create for more perfect days at this point is circling of those assets. Which of them do you want more of? So you've categorized them. So let's say you've got five assets in your financial category, 1 asset in contribution, 4 in experience, and 2 in core. You're going to need to go back through all of these assets and circle 1, just 1, in each of those 4 categories that you want more of in your life in the next year. And I say a year, you may have a different time frame that works in your life. The 12 to 18 month time frame is what's been most successful with the people I've worked with. So when you look again at your asset inventory, and perhaps one of your assets was your team at work, circle it. If that's something that, yes, you have this great team at work, but you know what? Maybe it's something you want to be bigger and better a year from now. Or perhaps in your core, core assets, you put that health was important and that health is an asset, that you've got 2 legs to walk on, and you're not in a wheelchair and you're not disabled, but you know what, maybe you want to drop your blood pressure, or maybe you want to drop a few pounds, or maybe you want to get healthier, or maybe you want to run that marathon you've always talked about. Well, then put that on your perfect day pyramid. So again, you're going to choose 1 asset or 1 thing you've written on your asset inventory in each of the 4 categories and transfer that to your perfect day pyramid. And then you're going to come up with, what is it that you really want, say, again, 12 months into the future. You've got this inventory. You know, it's interesting, if you look back at your list, because I've asked you to categorize them, right? I've asked you to write down 20 of your assets. And when you categorize them, it's interesting to just do an exercise of where's your wobble? You know, how many did you have that were categorized financial? How many did you have that were categorized contribution? How many did you have that were categorized experience assets? Again, this is where I go back to, I'm a betting woman, and I would say that you probably have the fewest of the assets on your list is probably contribution. And you're not alone. That's completely normal, and it's not something to feel bad about, okay? So balancing this wobble in your framework of focusing your time and attention on those 4 areas or those 4 things that you just came up with is how you create this perfect day mindset and this perfect day framework every single day. So you wake up, you've got an extra penny in your life or an extra hour in your day. What do you do with it? You go to your perfect day pyramid and you focus that time or you focus that money on those assets that you've circled and you've said you want more of. In a nutshell, really, that's fixing your wobble. That is coming up with your framework for a perfect day. So for those times that you want to hit that reset, for those times that you want to go on vacation, that's fine. We all need those breaks, and we all need, you know, those to step aside, right? But what you need to do is you constantly need to have your perfect day mindset close at heart and close at hand. You know, I recommend you keep that perfect day pyramid. You know, I paste mine on my bathroom mirror, because even though I'm, you know, the author and creator of this, and even though I call myself the perfect day engineer, I'm not perfect. I mean, I fall. And having it front and center, top of mind, is ever important to keeping my lifestyle deficit disorder at bay. Because again, I'll repeat it. I mean, if you're seeking perfection, you won't find it here, and I don't think you'll find it ever. If you're seeking balance, work-life balance, you're not going to find it, okay? But if you can find a way to balance the activities that you're doing in your life, to include activities working towards the 4 things that you just showed yourself, this is what's important to me. These are the things I want more of in my life. If you can focus some time and attention on those every day, as well as some time and attention on the rest, let's just call it the rest, whatever that might look like for you, then even though they may be segmented out, there's an imperfection to that imbalance, okay? you focusing on your 4 things and then letting life take over. So I have a framework that is called 411 that I want to share with you, which encourages you to do little small momentous activities in each of those 4 categories that you just eliminated for yourself. So do those items, work on those 4 items. Let's just say 10 minutes for each item. So if, core or health was one of yours, maybe you need to research a way, or maybe you need to research a list of marathons, for example. So it doesn't have to be to run the marathon, but every day before 11 a.m., you should come up with 4 items that is helping you get closer to your perfect day vision. So if there's 4 items that you've eliminated for yourself, what I also want you to do is write present tense statements as if they were today. And let's just take that marathon example. I run a marathon by next year, X date, and I do so, I finish strong and I finish healthily and I have a great time while doing it. And I create lots of friends while training. So make a specific and measurable statement about each of the 4 things that you've circled on your perfect day pyramid. And you have to make it something that you're 51%, only 51% possible. So make it a stretch is what I'm really trying to say, is that look out into the future 1 year from today and decide what is super, super exciting. And don't go into that mindset. Richard Branson is not wearing those glasses that's saying, oh, I'm not going to be able to achieve that. That's not true. Put on the 51% true Richard Branson glasses and tell yourself that if it's 51% possible, you write it down. That sentence, that affirmation is part of your perfect day. Okay, I know it sounds like simple framework, but it works. So you should have 4 sentences that are positive tense, present tense, positive statements of you having achieved what you really want to be true in a year. And that framework really is what's going to give you your perfect day. You put those 4 sentences together and weave in some touchy-feely aspects. Who are you with? What are you smelling? What are you seeing? What are you eating? So while the sentences and the affirmations that you've written might be sort of rote and specific and curated, throw in some sprinkles of where you are, and is the sun shining, or are you in a rainforest, or like I said, what are you eating, and what are you seeing? Who are you with, and who's around you? And it sounds silly, but when I go back to my very first perfect day written in 2003, let me tell you some of the key words in there. Some of the key words were God, Bloody Marys, 7 summits, and she climbs. And all those things, some of those might sound silly, but I got to tell you, however many years later, most of that's true. I mean, I still have God and Bloody Marys in my life, I can tell you that. And She Climbs is a nonprofit that is going strong. And I can't tell you the magic and the miracle that comes from being able to go back to a time in the past and review something that was really connected to you and to your values that you thought was important, and then to see that they've actually come true. So experiencing that miracle is yours for the taking. You can get that miracle, it's yours. Sit down and do the work. Again, if you're needing more, dial into Perfect Day Connect, the e-course. I will tell you, for those who've gone through the webinar, there's a special pricing that should be on the screen now. There's an exclusive code that I believe is going to give you 50% off of the price of Perfect Day Connect. So that is going to be a great way for you to make sure that you dial in and get the work done so that you can experience the miracle. There are 20 modules within the e-course. You're going to hear from me more than you probably care to. There's 3 workbooks, and like I said, 20 modules that are going to hold your hand and walk you through this process a lot slower than we've done here today. So I hope you'll take the time to do that. I hope you'll take the time to reach out and let me know, how this has helped you or where I've left you hanging. In the end, what I really want for you is just more freedom in your life to live the life that you deserve and the life that that you envision. It just takes time stepping off that hamster wheel to see what you really envision that life to be. So I thank you so much for your gift of time here today and being with me so that I could share with you my life's message, which is that of the perfect day path. I send you many, many perfect days, and I look forward to engaging with you in all things Perfect Day platform, CokieBerenyi.com, or through the Perfect Day Connect website. Until then, make it a perfect day.